Hello there YouTube, it's your boy B3, back with another kicking graphic novel review. Today we're looking at more NEO-PULP stuff. You guys know I love my pulp heroes, even though I don't review them a lot. But today we're talking about The Spider. Specifically, The Spider Volume 1, Terror of the Zombie Queen from DYNAMITE Comics. Now, this is considered one of the better DYNAMITE Comics pulp runs. And the spider is pretty cool. The original spider from like nearly 100 years ago. It's been that long. Nearly. He was more of just a shadow ripoff. And if you even like read about the creation of the spider, they even had to consult lawyers because they were very aware that they were taking a lot from the shadow. And you know I love the shadow. I reviewed multiple shadow books on here, at least 2. And if you're on Patreon, you've seen me get other NEO-PULP stuff like shadow masks, etc. in comic book hauls. But the spider went on to have like a serial. If you don't know what serials are, before television, they had TV shows that weren't TV shows. They were like movie serials. You'd go to the theater and you'd watch an episode and there'd be a big cliffhanger. And then you'd come back later and watch the next episode, blah, blah, blah. The Shadow had one, and in this movie serial, he had a very cool outfit that didn't basically just look like the Shadow, because his original outfit is basically like the Shadow, but with a domino mask instead of a scarf. That's basically what he looks like. But then the movie serial actually kind of made him look like his namesake a bit. He had this kind of like mask that turned into a bit of a cloak that had like spider webs on it. And that design is what this amazing, incredible comic design here is based off of. So if you want to look up the spider, he's usually not seen in this outfit. He's usually seen looking very similar to the Shadow. But I love this character design for the spider. It's incredible. Now this is normally the part where I would read you the back of the book. This doesn't have like a blurb telling you what the story is, which is kind of great. It just has quotes praising it. And then it says, Terror of the Zombie Queen collects issues 1 through 6 of the hit series, along with a writer's commentary on issue number 1 by David Liss, character sketches by Alex Ross, a complete cover gallery featuring the art of Alex Ross, John Cassaday, Francisco Francavilla, and more. And that is pretty cool, because I have said before that I never read the backs of comics and stuff before I read them, because there's always like a spoiler, it seems like. And I'm very happy that there's nothing on the back here that could spoil it for somebody. That's really awesome. Anyway, The Spider Volume 1, Terror of the Zombie Queen. Very cool pulp name, by the way. Very cool. And there's some very pulpy looking cover arts and stuff too. And then some beautiful Alex Rosses. Alex Ross was born to draw cover arts. And he's mostly known for like his DC stuff, I feel like. And a lot of Marvel, like Immortal Hulk and Spider-Man Worldwide and stuff, but his NEO-PULP work for DYNAMITE is great, and also his Universal Monsters art is very underrated, I have to say. Anyway, we go into this, and the spider. You see, the thing about a lot of these pulp heroes is that a lot of them are just billionaire playboys by day, fight crime at night, no powers, just cool gadgets and stuff. I know that sounds like Batman, right? Batman is based off of these characters. Batman is, for all intents and purposes, a pulp hero that just lasted a really long time. The Batman takes heavy inspiration from the Shadow and things like that, but a lot of it is different and made his own and whatnot. But yeah, this is one of those characters that cemented that billionaire playboy fights crime trope. And this rich playboy doesn't really have anything to do with his father's company. He has a good trust fund from it, but his father is like a war criminal. He makes weapons, chemical weapons specifically, which violates the Geneva Convention. So he kind of has horrible beef with his dad, because he was also a soldier that fought in the Middle East. And that's kind of a thing that disappoints me about this book, actually. it doesn't take place in like the 30s and 40s and stuff. A lot of these books will take place like during the Great Depression or World War II era. This version of the spider takes place in modern times. And I feel like that makes it lose something in a way. I don't know, but their shadow books are largely based in that time period, and he's so similar to the shadow that I think maybe they were just like, we need to distance him from the shadow a little, and then later they put him on the same team for masks anyway. Even though that spider was technically a different continuity than this one, because it takes place almost 100 years before the story. Anyhow, it happens in New York, very real city, and the spider is a vigilante. He does a lot of murdering. And also, he has a brand. He leaves a spider brand on his victims' foreheads. Now, if you're a big Dark Horse Mignola vs. Hellboy guy, that might sound familiar. It might remind you of the Lobster, aka Lobster Johnson, who leaves a claw burn on his victims' foreheads. It is the same. Some people that worked on Lobster Johnson actually worked on this book. In the original Shadow, I believe it's a stamp, like an ink stamp. But that's definitely, since it's a burn, I feel like that is directly from Lobster Johnson. But since it's still pretty cool. Anyway, he's a soldier, scarred by his time on the battlefield, but a billionaire, playboy with time to kill, or at least a trust fund from a billionaire. He himself isn't really one. He just mooches off one, and, you know, the ex he dumped when he went off to war is now married to, like, the chief of police, and he's back in her life, and it's very clear that they still have feelings for each other. It's very, very clear that they still have feelings for each other. Like, yikes. It's kind of like, come on, you two, Christ. But of course she's married and stuff, and he doesn't seem to really care that she's married. He's like, he just really wants her. And it's like, dude, you made your choice. Stop being a creep. Go blow some guy's head off. Go kill some murderer. And then, you know, the police chief kind of seems to know that he's the spider. In fact, he does know that he's the spider. He just hasn't vocalized that. He keeps it to himself. But his love interest, reporter gal pal, she definitely knows, and he knows she knows. And then also his lawyer, who's a Sikh. Nice Sikh representation, by the way. You never see that. His lawyer knows who he is and helps him. And then, you know, he has other people that help him, like a professor and whatnot. And the professor kind of knows he's the shadow, but also doesn't really super vocalize it. And you read this book and you kind of realize that everybody knows he's the shadow. They just can't prove it. There's actually a cop whose job is to take down... Did I say the shadow? I meant the spider. See, they're very similar. But so many people know that he is the spider. Including this one police officer who's like, I know you're the spider, I just can't prove it. I'm trying my best to prove it. And this cop does kind of turn out to be dirty. And he will do anything, even if it's illegal, to prove that this man is the friggin' spider. But it turns out there's a chemical weapon. And it's not pretty. It basically turns people into zombies. Like monster movie zombies. For real. And it's done by someone named Enput. You know, the Egyptian goddess. And she claims that she is also a vigilante. She claims she's doing this to bring down people in power. That destroy the lives of the weak and the poor and the innocent. But it's hard to buy that when one of the first things she does is blow a child's head off after infecting him with a zombie virus just to get the spider's attention. Yeah, Not great, but she's, from Egypt. She's an immigrant. She's all Egyptian themed, along with her bodyguard kind of boyfriend guy. Their relationship is a little unclear, but he's fiercely loyal to her. Fiercely, fiercely. And she has a very tragic backstory. In Egypt, her father was a really good man, a really good dad, really good husband. And a bunch of people killed him because they thought he was a terrorist with no proof. They basically just profiled him. They were like, oh, he looks like a terrorist, let's just kill him. And then they kill him, realize they were wrong, admit they were wrong, but then nothing happens. Like they don't really do anything to make amends, or they aren't held accountable. So then they go to America, and her mom is like, America will be a great place for us. But then her mom gets sick. Real sick. And if they're poor immigrants, they don't have insurance. She takes her to the hospital, and they get turned away. And since they don't have insurance, the hospital won't take her until she's on the edge of death. And then the doctors at the hospital are like, you people always come to the hospital at the last second. And she's like, last second you turned us away. You refused to help her. That's why she's dying. Then she's like forced into a life of prostitution to pay these medical bills. And she has this horrible, abusive, disgusting, evil pimp who you just love to see thrown out a window. And this pimp's bodyguard, also Egyptian. He like identifies with her. And so he kind of kills the pimp, which is great. And now they're using chemical weapons to turn people into zombies. And it's really hard for the spider to kind of fight his way through these zombies, because like if they were gangsters, he'd just blow their brains out, right? He'd just blast their heads. But they're not gangsters. They're innocent people that have just been infected. So he can't really hurt them too much. Like he'll break a leg or something to get out of there. But he can't hurt them too much because he's holding out hope that there's a cure. And he's very suspicious of his father because the chemical weapons used to do this are very, very much like something his father's company has made. And then we go back to the dirty cop that's trying to catch the spider, and he basically makes a trade with Anput. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Where he's like, I'll give you everything I have on the spider, even who I believe his identity to be. All you have to do is sleep with me. And he's like, real scum. God. She does it, though. But yeah, she finds out his identity. And you might think that it's kind of crazy that so many people know his identity. But that's like something from the original Spider. So many people learned his identity that he had to change his name and everything. But yeah, it's almost more believable that so many people have him figured out, to be completely honest. He barely tries to hide it, at least socially. It's very, very weird. But yeah, Amput's like, alright, Spider, just let me do my thing. If you keep following me, I'm going to kill, your ex-fiancé, and I'm going to kill all your friends, blah, blah, blah. But of course, he presses, and his fiancé does eventually get full zombieized, or ex-fiancé, sorry, gets full zombified. It's kind of whack, actually. But now let's pause to talk about his cool weaponry. Yeah, he actually has some pretty cool stuff. Like he has a knife where that has a taser in the hilt, so if someone takes it from him, he can taser them. Really cool. He also has his fancy spider guns. They have these laser sights that look like webs. But he can also shoot like a quote-unquote web line, which is basically a grapple, as well as like bullets, and I think he has like a net he can shoot as well, which I think he uses only once in this book specifically. But yeah, he's still pretty cool. No spider powers, no powers at all. Just wealthy, well-trained, and creative. And eventually, he finds out that the end result of Anput's plan will make her wealthy, will make her one of the elite that she says she's trying to take out. Yes, she has a horrific, tragic backstory. Her anger at the system is more than justified. That being said, at some point it stopped being about retribution and started being more selfish. It started being, how does she get rich? She kind of fell to the very corruption that she initially set out to fight against, which is very telling. Because the spider here, who I've accidentally called the Shadow many times in this video, he doesn't kill anyone innocent. He's only killing someone if he 100% knows for a fact that they are guilty, guilty, guilty. Which is why he kills her. In a very poetic but also kind of funny death scene for her. I actually really liked it. And then there's a smaller story in the back. There's this soldier that the spider kind of served with, who was kind of an Islamophobe, actually very much an Islamophobe. His recklessness got innocent children in the Middle East killed, and he didn't care. He was like, so what? They'll just grow up to be terrorists. Who cares? He was a bad guy. And he still doesn't seem like a great guy, but it does seem like he's trying to redeem himself. He's kind of working in New York to undermine gangs and stuff, and there's this guy called the Wingman who has like trained pigeons that help him do crime, which is very pulpy. I love it. But they are eventually able to take out the Wingman. It's just a very like quick one-issue thing. And I'm not going to tell you who the Wingman is, because it's actually a very, very cool twist, which I did not see coming. It got me. It really did. I thought it was really cool. And then this guy, this ex-soldier, now teams up regularly with the spider to help fight crime. And that's really the majority of the book here. There's also stuff in the back with like Dynamite news where it talks about the Shadow and masks. If you saw a comic book haul on Patreon a while ago, you know I got a pretty rare variant cover of Masks #1, which is several heroes on a team together. One is the spider, but it's not this spider. It's the same character, just a different continuity, because this story takes place in like the 40s, I believe. So it's a different continuity than this story. But it has Green Hornet and Kato, the Shadow, the Spider, and the descendant of Zorro who has taken up his mantle. I need to read more Zorro too, and Green Hornet, and Shadow, and Spider. But it's them all on a team together. Pretty cool. And there is a preview of it with Alex Ross interior art, which is very, very cool. Very cool indeed. But yeah, that's mostly it for the spider. You got some pretty cool features in the back of the book here. I think they included a lot of cool stuff, because you got character designs for the spider by Alex Ross, and the character design is the best spider design ever. The little open mouth is kind of weird. I know he had that in the cereal, the open mouth in the mask, but when he closes it, you don't really see a mouth at all, and it looks really cool. Then he opens his mouth and it looks odd. I think they kept the mouth hole so that he felt less like Spider-Man, who doesn't have a mouth hole, famously so. And also because it's more accurate to his pulp cereal design. But yeah, also this director's commentary is very interesting. You don't see that in trades a lot. I quite liked that. Plus a very cool variant cover gallery. So yeah, The Spider Volume 1 Terror of the Zombie Queen from Dynamite Comics and David Liss is really good, story-wise. There are some typos, though. Like, there are speech bubbles with repeated words that aren't like a character stuttering or anything, and there's like words left out. There are typos in this book. If this was like a self-published indie book straight to Kindle or something, where it was one person writing, penciling, coloring, everything, inking, blah, 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 I would be a bit more lenient of that. It's hard to find your own typos, but this is like a full creative team from a decently known publisher with licensed characters. They know better than that. There were multiple typos and speech bubbles in this. Those definitely should have been caught and ironed out. I'm admittedly reading the digital version of this because I cannot find these trades anywhere reliably. I prefer to buy from physical comic shops for my physical trades. And I know it's hypocritical to be like, oh, I want to support the brick and mortar stores and read on Kindle, but you can't find everything at the brick and mortar stores. And sometimes the physical versions of books are also much more expensive than the digital. Like, there are some Marvel Epic collections I want that are incredibly expensive physically and very affordable digitally. Yeah. But those definitely should have been caught. I feel like there's not an excuse for that. Then there's the art. I mentioned the cover arts are all great. The design of the spider is incredible. The art looks weird. I'm admittedly not a big fan of the art in this book, and typically when I talk about the art, it is much more subjective, you know? Like, this is an artistic style that doesn't apply to me. Everyone's face is extremely uncanny. A lot of their fingers are really long in some shots and stuff. It's odd. There's a lot of shitty art in here to me. Get it? Because I farted. Yeah, no, I mean, it's better than anything I could do, for sure. It's like got this weird kind of 3D-ish thing going on. I was not a big fan of the interior comic art. Really at all. But I enjoyed the story. It was very pulpy. And I do want to talk about the setting a little more. How instead of being in kind of a classical 30s, 40s pulp setting, it's set in modern times. Part of me feels like that takes a lot away from the pulpiness, but I also feel like it adds a lot to this character too. 'Cause remember, the spider basically is just a knockoff of the Shadow. And don't get me wrong, I know that new characters take from old characters and art is built upon art of the past. That's a normal thing. That's a normal thing. There are a lot of kaiju I like that are built upon the likes of Godzilla and Kong and things. And, you know, you got so many similar heroes and other things like Namor and Aquaman, of course, and, you know, Swamp Thing and Man-Thing. But compare those characters now, and they're very different from each other. Man-Thing and Swamp Thing, even though they have basically the same origin story, are now incredibly different characters. Namor and Aquaman have kind of always been incredibly different characters, to be honest. There's a lot to say about this. And I think putting him in modern times actually kind of helps distance him from the Shadow. It makes him feel different and stand out a lot more than he normally would. And I do think that is a good thing. That being said, I do miss kind of the more classic, pulpy setting. But that is it. Thank you all very much for your support. Please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. Check out all the cool links in the description below, Facebook, Twitter, etc. And there were a lot of cool twists and stuff in this book that I didn't tell you about. So I definitely recommend reading it for yourself. Support these classic pulp heroes if you want to keep them around. That's it. Thank you all once again. See you all next time. Bye for now.